We live in an economy at the moment that's in a process of transformation. We've sort of moved from really agrarian economy, added to it secondary industry, and now we're moving into an advanced manufacturing economy, assisted by some incredibly important changes in the local economy. So,
well, that transformation by definition sees things go and things come. So what's come and what's gone?
Well, I think what we've seen is really a dramatic change in the nature of our manufacturing. So we've seen a lot of the old white goods, things that were protected by large tariff walls, low cost base. They've all been really swept out of the economy. And now what we're doing is we're seeing a more advanced manufacturing industry growing. So the defence sector and a whole lot of mining services industries which are beginning to grow, and a more advanced manufacturing and component supply sector to the automotive industry and a whole range of other industries.
Yet the public perception is that manufacturing's in trouble. National Australia Bank economists, for example, last week said that despite the headlines, and by that I would think General Motors, Mitsubishi, Bridgestone, that despite the headlines, there are more manufacturing jobs now than there were 12 months ago. Is that the information that you get as well?
It is, and so I think that's against the national trend, and I think what we're seeing is the transformation in manufacturing in South Australia away from old manufacturing into advanced manufacturing. So the sorts of jobs we're seeing out at the ASC with the Air Warships Destroyer contract, the submarine maintenance, and increasingly jobs supporting the mining industry. So out at Burton, there at Osmoflow, a company there that provides really advanced technologies for wastewater treatment and desal, supplying not only the mines in South Australia but mines in Western Australia and increasingly mines around the world with their technology. And they're just growing enormously out there. A large number of tradespeople and engineers and chemical scientists all out there doing fantastic high-end work.
Let's look at some of the trouble spots. Construction, it's well documented that there has been a slowdown there. The federal stimulus funding propped up the construction sector for some time. That's now ended and we're seeing a real softening there. Is there a state government role and responsibility to intervene in the short term?
Well, we still have a pretty solid pipeline of projects coming through in South Australia. There's something like 13 cranes in the sky around the CBD at the moment. And we're seeing some quite strong public infrastructure programs going. But you're right, that can't continue forever because our revenues have been knocked around by the global financial crisis. So we have to think of other ways in which we can continue that investment activity. There's no doubt that there are some strong balance sheets out there in the private sector, but people are feeling knocked around because of a lack of confidence because of what's happening in Europe and what they're seeing in the US. So we have to, I think, use some of the tools we have in our toolkit. Obviously we can't throw a lot of revenue at this because revenues are declining here. So we're looking at ways in which we can, on a revenue neutral basis, bring forward some of that investment in the construction sector.
Some examples of how you might do that?
Well, we're thinking about that at the moment. We're designing that at the moment. We haven't really settled on anything, but it will have to be revenue neutral. We know that there's a lot of, in particular, apartment dwellings that are discouraged by the present sort of taxation arrangements, and we need to think about how we can grapple with that. But there are also some other measures. There's planning rules which can constrain investment, and we're thinking about that. And other areas of red tape that might get in the way of that investment. So there's some of the things that we're doing.
Can you just explain that apartment dwelling concept? What are the restraints?
Well, essentially the way the taxation and levy system works is that there's quite a strong subsidy for green acre developments and quite a discouragement for apartment and high density dwellings, especially in the city. And that's something that's been put to us by those investors that are considering investing in the city. And there's also certain constraints on building heights here which can also bear on the economics of the project. So they're things that we're grappling with.
So how do you find revenue neutrality in something such as, say, stamp duty relief for apartment dwellings in the CBD? How do you
Well, that's the challenge, and that's what we're working through.
Other sectors in the economy, retail, very much subject to national and international trends. Do you just sit back and say, boy, it's tough out there?
It's very difficult for us to stimulate retail investment, except once again, to the extent that we can free up some of the regulatory arrangements. I mean, we're proposing a massive change, which you'll see in play on Monday in the mall, which is the freeing up of the shop trading hours. And traditionally, we have very restricted shop trading hours in Adelaide. What we're proposing is to free up trading on public holidays in the CBD, in return for which we're also looking at creating 2 new half-day public holidays on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. Now that will free up 13 public holidays, which will create a lot of opportunity for additional retail spending. We saw that when we opened up these days over Christmas, and we think that will be a stimulus for retail spending here in South Australia.
Another sector is tourism. Again, issues such as the high Australian dollar and consumer preferences you can't control, but the state does have a role in the branding of the state.
Yeah.
That's traditionally a state government role.
Absolutely.
It would appear on the face of it we haven't done that very well recently.
Well, look, I mean, there's some obviously celebrated examples of some difficulties in the tourism area, but I think I'd like to think about the way in which we project our image of ourselves, not only to each other, but to the world, as being a broader thing than just tourism. I think it's the way we present ourselves to investors, the way we present ourselves interstate and overseas in a range of forums, including our tourism offerings. And I think that we've been doing a bit to think about what it would mean for Adelaide to have a vision for the future. We've promoted 7 ideas about the state, and I'd like to see their expression in some branding of our state.